Good morning, everyone. Welcome to week 8 of Diamond Heart Project. And it's a early morning here in Oahu, and just completed the Kundalini practice. And want to jump on with you and just share something that was coming up for this week. And we got these ebbs and flows in the cosmos, and the expansive part of it we've been talking for a while, meaning for years, around like this is the most evolutionary time in human history, around the human species evolving into a higher dimensional understanding of itself, a higher intelligence, not so much IQ, but meaning like a higher dimensional realm or higher. When we say higher, we don't mean like levels, like you're going from 5th to 6th grade, but it's a good way to like see it from a logical standpoint. It's more about working into a more developed frequency, and so we're actually going further in, and the core of the being has a very high frequency, and as that drifts out, kind of like water, it lightens its frequency and it gets anyways. But this higher lower kind of concept can be used to explain it for some kind of understanding from the cognitive mind. But either way, we're moving into a higher, less dense, higher vibrational space, dimensional space in this planetary realm and experience as the human species. And so as we move into that space, there's more information that opens up, right? It's like, again, back to the grade reference, like as there's only so much information that you can comprehend as a 2nd grader. And as a 5th grader or 6th grader or 9th grader, as you move up through the ranks of the school system, you're able to handle a more complex level of understanding or information that you maybe couldn't understood at the age of 2nd grade, but you could at 7th grade. And so that same kind of concept, think about it as we move into these more expansive vibrational spaces or more expansive dimensional spaces. There's more intelligence or more information that we access, right? Like working with plant medicines, like you have an ability to access, the God intelligence, and what that means to you, to have more clarity about your life. And so these profound moments can happen, these aha moments, these spaces of information. And so plant medicine is one beautiful path that is the fast track, because it immediately takes you to what you might call the finish line, if that's a reference. But the point is, or you can do other types of modalities and experiences to access the same information. And again, the anchor of all of that is your spiritual practices. Whatever your spiritual, when I say spiritual, it doesn't mean they have to really come from a religious understanding or dogma understanding. It's just more, what are your self-love sacred practices that you do for yourself? And as we move into the second half of the 8 weeks of the 16-week program of Diamond Heart Project, we're going to begin to invoke these powerful modalities. And one that I want to bring to light to you today is a modality called RENXUE. And it's an ability to recognize that there are 10 fundamental patterns in the human consciousness. And there are many more that kind of like roots like grow out from these, but we've been able to look at them from a very centered space around these 10 patterns. And a lot of our behaviors, a lot of our insights, a lot of the way we navigate as a species in interactions or society or life stem from some of these fundamental patterns. Remember, we talked about the very beginning of this Diamond Heart Project around being able to be in a space of curiosity, a space of neutrality, no judgment. And that way you can really see things from a clear space. And so RENXUE was started by this Qigong, or Qi master. He's from China. His name is Wan Zi. And you can look it up yourself and find out more information around the history or legend of the practice. But the point is, he was a Qi master. He was a orphaned as a child, and he has that mystical storybook around his life. Around as a child, he was adopted. He was, the monks noticed him in the orphanage around having some gifts around his being, and he was adopted by the monastery, and he grew up with Buddhist monks his life, and in the age of his teenage years his gifts really began to come online, and people used to begin to come from all around to see him, to receive more like energy work, if you want to call it that, like we might now in this day call Reiki or hands-on healing, and receive energy work from him, or qigong work, to help them with their medical their medical ailments or things that they were working through. And he would clear things, terminal things out of people's systems, and then he would notice that 2, 3, 4, 5 years later they would come back with the same ailment. And he began to recognize that it wasn't just about clearing the frequency out of the system energetically, mentally, emotionally. It was also working on the consciousness around the belief systems around that person's ailments. And, they're much deeper than just medical ailment that might be a disruption into your body. And begin to really understand that, and really begin to go into his practices and get into his own inner wisdom of his own being, and begin to understand like how our consciousness, our software of how we think and operate, can begin to create the reality that we see. And no matter what you're looking for, you'll always find it. And if there's a limited belief or limited view around what you're looking for, that's what you'll find. The great analogy is the fact that if you were, all of a sudden felt called to buy a new car, and it would have to be a yellow Volkswagen, or, and you never see yellow Volkswagens. The moment you begin to identify with yellow Volkswagens, you begin to see them everywhere. And it's the same kind of concept around our consciousness, is the fact that, like, if somebody, for example, somebody's first lover wasn't faithful, and that was really a traumatic experience for them, or challenging experience for them, involving love and relationships, that moment forth, like, whether they know it or not, their consciousness is going to be looking for unfaithful signs in their next partner. Whatever the signs came up for them in their last relationship, they're going to look for those in their next partner, whether they know it or not. So where the partner doesn't maybe respond to a text or a call, or all of a sudden one day isn't available or is too busy, they're going to automatically, their consciousness is going to begin to compare that to their past relationship, because remember, their consciousness is always trying to keep them safe. It isn't about judging things, or it's always trying to keep itself safe. And so when you begin to break out of these limiting belief patterns, the consciousness sometimes will really like try to hold on and create stories around things. I remember, a few weeks back working with somebody that was coming from a victim consciousness, and his ex-partner wasn't faithful, and this business partner wasn't faithful to him, and all of these things. And he was so wrapped up in the story around like how these people were doing things to him, that that's all he could see. He couldn't see that his actual limited consciousness from his childhood trauma was creating this story, and actually creating the experience in his reality for these things to happen. And it's really, again, about that radical responsibility, not from a shame or blame, but this is one of the first modalities we start really diving in to looking at some of these things around ourselves and our consciousness. And again, the only way to really see it clearly is being in a space of neutrality and a space of curiosity. So this review around the RENXUE modality is going to be, the first week is going to be really identifying patterns, and the next week is going to be more about how we shift them and how we clear them. It's very simple. You can clear a pattern you've had for 40 years, for 10 years, for 3 weeks in a base of a minute out of your consciousness. And it's really just recognizing it and really deleting the app and replacing it. We'll get more into that in the second week, but this week is just really about more self-discovery. So I'm just going to go over a real quick review of the 10 fundamental patterns we found in the human consciousness, that have been kind of diagnosed, as you would say, not from a therapist, but more importantly, just being able to recognize. And again, there are many more subconscious patterns that come from this, or subtle patterns that come from this. But these are like the 10 ones we've been able to identify. I'm just going to go a brief overview and see what references with you or resonates with you, and you'll be able to see, recognize a lot of these in just a way that humans operate in society. So, first one we're going to look at is what they call polarized thinking. That process of our society's taught to think that way. Polarized thinking, like look at races, right? Or look at like governments, right? The political parties, like either red or blue, like, and it has to be one way or the other, right? Or if you have a concept of around a race, around being a certain way, and everyone in that race is that way. No, it's not that way. Or everyone that lives in this area of town acts that way. Not true, right? Or the jokes around, so many things around religions and how people act in religion. Everyone in that religion acts this way. No, they don't. So, polarized thinking, and it's a thing that's pushed in society here. That kind of rolls right into the second one is overgeneralization, like generalizing everything. Oh, all women do this, or all men do that. Really? Do they? Or pit bulls. All pit bulls are dangerous. Well, they are. So I'm just giving you some examples of like some generalized thinking around how it works and seeing how they show up in life, right? And media, especially like news media, like thrives off these fundamental patterns, and people become successful because they pick a side on something intentionally, just to be an extremist around something, around one way or the other, to get publicity. And so these patterns sometimes aren't just so subconscious and you don't know they're there. Sometimes they're initially activated or operated from just to like cause that opposite to happen, right? And so our consciousness can do the same thing. It's really funny how it works. And when you can just begin to understand how your consciousness is a software program based on experiences you've had in life, and begins to form concepts of thought and beliefs. And so doing this work that I'm at Project is to get beyond that, like beyond the identities, beyond these processes or limiting understandings of life in our consciousness. And again, nothing wrong with any of us, just able to look at how we've gotten here so far. And some of these thought processes have helped us, formed us who we are today, which has been a really beautiful thing. But now as you're looking to expand and to grow past it, we need to be able to see it and learn how to release it. Okay? So the next one is what they call unfounded suspicions, is number 3. You see these in many ways. You see these in relationships, around, the person didn't call me back. The person didn't text me back when they said they would. Oh, they must be doing this, right? And it comes in maybe sometimes a level of doubt or distrust around, you begin to create a story because that person isn't responding to you when you want them to, or expectation you have. So you begin to create some suspicions that are unfounded. And it could be about anything. It could be about people, celebrities, friends, coworkers. It doesn't matter. It's your mind begins to go into this limited understanding of unfounded suspicions because something happened that marked off or activated that process of creating a thought. The easiest reference is the people in relationships, right? The person isn't responding to them, or they acted differently when they thought they would act a certain way, and so they begin to create some suspicious thoughts or unfounded beliefs around whatever it is. Number 4 is negativity, withdrawal, inactivity, pessimism. Again, this is a fundamental pattern in the human consciousness, and you can see how that can show up, and how it kind of responds with these. Like if somebody's not getting something from their partner that they want to get, or a lover, or something they're dating, or a friend, and then begin to create some unfounded suspicions around why that's happening, and then that person that's creating unfounded suspicions goes into a space of negativity or withdrawal. Like, man, it's tricky how these things play. And so again, the number superpower one we can have in all of this is being able to acknowledge when we see these things, again, without any judgment. So number 5 is conscious having fixed expectations or preconceptions or taking things for granted, false assumptions. Again, you can see this thread that kind of runs through a lot of these, right? Like fixed expectations, taking things for granted, false assumptions can kind of be similar to unfounded suspicions, right? Around that. And so I see it happen all the time with, drinking grandmother, in the plant medicine circles. Like people come in, even if they say they have no expectations, they come with a fixed expectation around, they think the experience is supposed to go. And then it doesn't happen that way. And then they don't have anything happen because they were so tied into or locked on like how that experience is supposed to happen. Since it wasn't that way, they missed what was really trying to present to them. So that's that. Again, we're going to cover all of this on the integration call as well too. Number 6 is greediness, and that's just not just around financial. It's greediness around, you see people when you go to the buffet, some people are really greedy with the food, right? It's just the greed is never feeling they have enough, right? And it's not just about greedy about people who want more. It's also the thought process like not having enough. And then you see in hoarders and different things, like so many ways this shows up. Number 7 is self-centeredness. And putting people first. I grew up with a little bit of this, being an only child, like not really having to have the concept of like to share with a brother or sister, right? And it wasn't about having initial choice of like I'm going to be self-centered. It was like I didn't have to think about sharing anything else with anyone else. And so when I begin to get into roommate situations or more expensive situations or team situations or group situations, like understanding the concept of sharing was something that was a life lesson for me as growing up. So that's my own reference. Number 1 was avoiding and hiding. This is a big one. See people come out of ceremony or having a deep process in a retreat with medicine, and then all of a sudden they're no-show, right? They're not coming to the integration calls. They're not responding to texts. They're at home watching Netflix all the time. They just go into this place of avoiding and hiding, right? Or something you don't want to confront, or something you don't want to deal with. Or last time you were at the store, that person that checked you out was rude, so you're going to go a different line because you want to kind of hide and avoid that process. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with any of these conscious patterns. It's just to able to acknowledge them when they show up. And if you choose to do them, all good. Just the fact that having the wisdom to acknowledge when you see them is most important. 9 is stubbornness. I grew up with this one. I'm an Aries, fiery, and sometimes that stubbornness comes out. Being able to work with it, process it over the course of many decades, and really look at it. So yeah, and it came from polarized thinking. Like I can do this on my own, and so yeah, that was a beautiful one to work through myself. And then 10 is fight for dominance. Like needing to be right. Whatever it is, and that can show up in many ways. These can show up in many ways. They can be very subtle, or they can be very profound or very pronounced in our behaviors. But something can be really, really subtle. A fight for dominance, even down to like when you feel you take the right path and not get in contact with that person or not say anything. But as you walk away in your mind, you're like proving to yourself why you're right. Same thing. So these are just, again, the 10 fundamental patterns of human consciousness. I want to bring them to light to maybe feel into it for yourself. Which one resonates with you, which or multiple ones resonate with you, how it shows up in your life. Hopefully you're able to look at them and kind of laugh about it and see them. Because again, the first 2 steps of this process is being able to acknowledge and then to accept that they're there. And so we'll work more on that. And this kind of rolls right into the surrender process. There's a directive on the email this week around like feeling into what does surrender feels like to you. And surrender, remember, is not the white flag waving around giving something up. Surrender is actually being able to soften and lean into something that's maybe a little uncomfortable. And whether that be a conversation with a friend, a lover, something inside yourself, like being able to lean into it and just surrender to like that maybe uncomfortable space. Like Sananga is great for surrender, or hot bay, or these kind of things. Not just about medicine, but the point is like these are examples of experiences. And so just really lean into surrender. It's very subtle. You'll notice that there's a part of you that's always surrendering in every moment. And sometimes it could be 1%, and the 9% to you is not in surrender. But there's always somewhere in your system that is in a level of surrender or a level of peace or centeredness. And so the practice of surrender is really beautiful around dropping into that. So blessings on your day. Hopefully this makes some sense to you, and we'll have some longer conversations around it in the integration calls. So love you. Blessings.